Hi everyone, and welcome to the Sports Countdown podcast with your host, me, Declan Hughes, and my good friend Peter Lynch. And we are delighted to have Kristian Ross here with us today, who's going to talk a little bit of rugby. Busy time in the rugby, Kristian, with the Six Nations underway. Some shock results maybe in week one. But first, do you think you could tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, as you say, big rugby man. Been an Ireland fan since I was a small child, which you probably wouldn't guess judging by the accent. So I actually moved to Northern Ireland in 2015. I was a big Ulster fan, season ticket holder there for first year at university. Since 2012, I've been writing for a blog called Harpin on Rugby. So if you haven't already had a look at that, check it out. It's one of the best Irish rugby blogs out there. And obviously for the last few years, I've just been sort of keeping an eye on the Six Nations and obviously the domestic leagues as a fan. I've sort of stepped a little bit away, did a bit of journalism, that kind of thing. But now I think I'm just a full-time couch pundit. So
It happens, mate. Don't worry, that's all of us. I know. I think we should just dive right in. It's with Ireland, obviously not a great result for me and you, but nobody wants to get off to a losing start. No matter who you're playing against, first game of the Six Nations is always a big one. They'll be thinking about that for a while, especially in the build-up to to the next couple of games. But it was a frustrating day, I think. But how disappointed do you think Ireland will be with that result?
Yeah, hugely. I mean, obviously that they haven't won at the Millennium Stadium now. Well, it's the Principality Stadium now since 2013. Farrell's record. He hasn't got off to the best possible start so far. That sort of transitional period that we thought we were going to see between him and Joe Schmidt has been rather rocky. In terms of obviously the performance, we all know that the Peter O'Mahony red card didn't help things. But I think the worst thing about it was the fact that actually there was times in the game where Ireland did look in control in the first half. Obviously, we're just let down by accuracy issues, whether it be kicking the touch. Obviously, that one right at the end, I'm sure we'll touch on. It's been a little bit of a theme actually of Andy Farrell's Ireland in the last 12 months is that they're just not clinical enough. They always have lots of territory, but they just don't know how to finish off. And unfortunately, obviously, Wales on the day, despite the fact that obviously they did have more players, at half time. I think it was Ireland's game there for the taking, to be honest. And unfortunately, it was just a slew of errors in the second half that led to Wales taking the match.
Yeah, that's spot on. Like, definitely frustrating. You mentioned that red card. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Ireland's first red in the Six Nations history. 14th minute of the game. No matter what sport you're playing, it's obviously going to affect, the way you go forward. And I think today he's just been hit with a 3-match ban, which makes it even worse. So
yeah, and he's one of the the players who everyone knows Peter O'Mahony is from Munster as the sort of the aggressive the aggressive man who loves to turn the ball over, who loves to make big carries. And I suppose, you could always say that his aggression is very, very close to the line. And unfortunately, obviously, this time he went too far. And I mean, it's a clear red, plain as day. Obviously, both the commentators at the time on the BBC knew fine well that it was going to be a red. And I mean, to play that amount of time without, with 40 men on the field was incredible. I mean, what I would say, though, is that Ireland adjusted very, very well after the red card. And I mean, from obviously a point of view where you're thinking from Wales. I mean, Wales have had real problems as well under Wayne Pivac. Their Six Nations performance last year, after doing so well in previous years, it was abysmal, really. But they'll be delighted to chalk this one up. So yeah, it is. It's really disappointing from my point of view. Mind you, there's still another 4 games left. But I mean, when you lose your first game, it is normally hard to see where. It is hard to see how you're going to win it, but it could still potentially happen.
Yeah, well, boys, I think you guys are having a bit of a sad time over it, but Kristian, I want to speak about the biggest result of the weekend, which was Scotland getting that win over England. Couldn't contain my delight for much longer there. 11-6, close scoring game, but Scotland's first win at Twickenham since 1983. I mean, what a performance from the boys. I'm really proud of them. What's your takeaway from that game? Do you think was it just the dominance from Scotland, or did England do anything a little bit wrong or different that they could have approached that game with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, overall, it was a great team performance from Scotland, and I will happily admit I always do like to see England get beat. Actually, last year the year before last, I was actually living in Twickenham, and my first thought on that after that win for Scotland was it was so disappointing the fact that obviously we've had this pandemic, because Twickenham would have been absolutely buzzing. You know, I lived a few minutes from the ground. And Twickenham on a match day, even Twickenham's main street, there's nothing quite like it. It is absolutely buzzing. So obviously that was really, really disappointing. What I would say about England, and I think a lot of people haven't touched on it, is the fact that they included, I think it was 5 Saracens players. And obviously for those who don't know, Saracens obviously after being relegated last season down at the Championship, Saracens haven't played actually they've only played 1 domestic game, up to 2 now, 2 domestic games this season. And because obviously the Championship didn't start until last month, so a lot of the Premiership players now have been playing, since November time. And I think obviously that was a massive factor. People said, are these Saracens players going to be match fit? And they weren't, and it was a big risk from Eddie Jones. And I suppose this was actually maybe the first time where England have been picked on before a game, and people have actually looked and picked the key, the key weakness, and it happened. I mean, they looked lethargic. No territory. Owen Farrell was miles off the pace as well, and obviously he's such a key player for England. But that's obviously not to take anything away from Scotland. What I would say is throughout the game, though, I was very, very worried for Scotland. And I thought to myself, because England essentially got to the point where, England were happy to commit penalty after penalty, because in terms of obviously Scotland going for the try line, it didn't really happen up to a certain point. And I was thinking to myself, is this going to be similar to the 38 all draw, whatever it was? I don't know. There was that many scores in that game. I can't remember what the score was now. But I had a feeling, are they going to come back here and get it? But obviously Scotland held on, and obviously there's plenty of players as well who threw the hat in the ring for the Lions this year. You think of Hamish Watson and Johnny Gray, who was just absolutely outstanding. So yeah, and it's certainly thrown a spanner in the works, especially in terms of my predictions, because I thought England were going to win it, and now I'm sat here with my calculator and my abacus and trying to work out what who needs what over the next 4 games.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you watching the game. Just the dominance from Scotland, territory-wise, it was right on England's 20, but it was just we couldn't get that. We got the 1 try, but we missed a couple of penalty kicks as well, and I was just at the back of my head, I'm just like, England's going to get a try here, or they're going to do something a little bit different, and it will just change the complexion of the game. So I was always a little bit worried right until the final, right until we got the ball out at the end. It was really it was a really tense watch for me. But Kristian, you kind of picked up on it as well. I wanted to ask them, was it just an overall great team performance from Scotland, do you think? Or do you think maybe a few individuals just had that edge that gave Scotland the victory?
I think it was, yeah. I think in terms of, like I say, I think it was a team performance. I mean, touching obviously Hamish Watson and Johnny Gray there, and I think we'll definitely see come summer, the likes of Finn Russell in there. He's a bit of a maverick. I think at times he's a sort of player where he gets the ball, you're actually scared what he's going to do with it. No, I think it was a superb performance, and in fairness to Gregor Townsend, this has been a project over the last few years. I think the worst thing for Scotland now will be is that if they don't go on and win more games in this tournament. I mean, it sounds a little bit harsh to say. I mean, I think they're bound to beat Italy. Because who hasn't? But I think, I think for me, actually, if you flip it around to all the, from a point of view of all the other teams, is that, France will be worried about playing them now. Ireland will be worried about playing them now. Wales will be worried. And really, I suppose this game, this year, without trying to sound too cliches, that there's probably no easy games in this championship department. There'll be a real, I think there'll be a real worry around how good Scotland are. But I think we'll definitely see an improvement as well from England next week. I mean, they obviously play Italy, and their record against Italy is great. I mean, I think every time England play Italy, I think it's always sort of, crash ball tactics, get the balls, over the gain line. So we'll definitely see an improved performance from England next week as well.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot already, but well, obviously you've mentioned Italy could be the team to not do anyone any favors because they're going to lose every week. But so I can guess, I want to get your final table predictions, but I can already guess who's going to come in last. But the way you talk there, I don't think it's too easy to guess who's going to win it.
So I'd probably say Italy propping up the table. And then fifth, I think, is a really, really difficult one. I mean, I do feel sorry for Italy on some levels because, I think when they brought in, when Conor O'Shea was there, they brought him in to sort of improve, not just obviously the national team, but rugby in Italy in general. And actually, when you look at the domestic side of things, like you look at Treviso and Zebri, actually domestically, they did improve a lot in the Pro 14. So, you just wonder whether or not, in a few years, they might be there or thereabouts, but, they need to start getting results. And then in fifth, I know it isn't easy now, especially after that first weekend. I feel like I want to say Wales. The only reason being, I think that maybe because, the fact that they beat Ireland, but the fact that, they made a real... they made a real meal of it. Let's be honest. Like, to have Omani off the field for that long, and really they only just got over the line. So I'd probably say Wales. It could, and it could be Ireland. It could be Ireland, which would be, I think, a disaster. But it could happen. So yeah, fifth I'm not too sure about, or fourth, or third, or second. No, but I'd be surprised if obviously there's not a marked improvement by Ireland. But I'd say Wales. I think in fourth it'll be. I'd say Ireland in fourth actually at this stage. It all depends on next week. Obviously they're playing France. I mean, Ireland's record obviously at the Aviva is incredible. I think there's only one home defeat since 2014, and that was to England. But obviously France, I think France is the team to beat this year. So I'd say Ireland fourth. Third, I'm going to go Scotland on the basis that they'll massively improve hopefully this year championship. And then second and first, I tweeted out before the before the first game, and I said England to win it. What was I thinking? I'd probably say France. I think France might win it. I think England might come second. But I think actually it sounds weird, but I think we might see a draw this year in one of the games. I'm not sure which one, but I have a feeling that there might be a game that really does go down to the wire. But I think France will. I think France might just shade it. Having said that, England are going to have to improve, and like I touched on there earlier on, England will be thinking exactly the same thing as Ireland now. That they won't want to play France. They won't want to play Wales. So I don't think there's any easy games. But yeah, so I'll go France, England. This is never going to happen. I'm bound to be well off. France, England. Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and then propping up the table, I think we'll go with it. Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, so here on the Sports Countdown podcast, we love to ask our guest for a top 3 countdown within the sport. So obviously this week's rugby. So Kristian, our countdown this week, we want to ask you, who do you think the top 3 players will be in the tournament? And we'll start at 3 and we'll work up our way up to 1.
What a question. I think it's difficult. I think I'd probably go. I think maybe from I'd say I'm gonna go James Lowe for Ireland. I think he'll be the one to make a big difference if Ireland do need some kind of cover throughout the weeks ahead. Fantastic player. I think he was one of the better players on Saturday. And then in second, I'll probably be really, really boring. I'll probably say Owen Farrell for England. Obviously, he didn't have a very good game against Scotland at all, but I think Owen Farrell is essentially, England's Johnny Sexton, same position. And if one of those two doesn't play well, you tend to find that the entire team's heads up. So I think I'll go with Farrell in second. And then first, he had a great opening week, so I'll probably go with Antoine Dupont from France. I think I probably could pick a host of any of the French players. I think if France don't win it this year, then I just think it would be mad. I think they were brilliant last year. They probably should have won it last year. But I think this is and I think Dupont he's been absolutely brilliant both internationally and domestically. So I'll go for him.
Interesting. I think it's important that you didn't say Peter O'Mahony there. So.
Yes. So yeah. Incredible. I mean, it would be brilliant though. I mean, if he did end up getting player of the championship, having played 25% of the matches that actually happened. So.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, exciting to see those French guys in action, definitely. Exciting to see what's going to happen in the weeks to come, and we've definitely put you to the test this week. So thanks so much for coming on. We've really enjoyed it and really, really appreciate your time, mate.
No problem. Cheers.
And also just to those tuning in, really appreciate it. All those watching. So if you have time, keep on watching. Give us a follow on social media. That's really appreciated. We'll be back for more next week.